think about like the sum of your, in earlier stage data science, it was 100% on effort, but 0% on skill. So 100 plus zero is 100, right?
Yeah.
But then later on, it was like maybe 80% effort, but now 80% skill. So 80 plus 80 is 160. So the total effect was greater, right? But that you only get to 80/80 after time because you need the experience to build up you need the time to build up your skills.
Welcome to the Tech Guide podcast. I'm the show's host, Ryan Atkinson. Everyone is wanting to break into tech and have a successful career. The only problem is how? We'll use this podcast to sit down with people that have broken into tech, pivoted their career, or have actual advice to young working professionals. Today, we have Jimmy Nguyen on the podcast to talk about his story from becoming a business intelligence analyst and then making a goal to become a data scientist. He would then reach this goal 4 years later at a company called LinkedIn. He shares a story on what it took to become a data scientist there, the free work that he did internally to get this position and the whole interview process. He has a ton of takeaways about perseverance, hard work, and the mindset young working professionals should have. This was one of my favorite episodes to record. This one is amazing. And if you find it as amazing as well, please make sure to follow or subscribe to this podcast and share with any other friends that may want a tech guide. You can also learn more about us at techguide.org. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hi.
Super excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to chatting with you.
It's going to be great. You have great experiences. And a spoiler alert for everyone, this is our first question because you work at LinkedIn, but you also have a brother that also works at LinkedIn.
Yes, I do. That's right. He's 2 years younger. Straight brother. I started LinkedIn a long time ago in 2015. He decided to come along on the journey, I think at the end of 2021. So it's been a year now. Yeah, a year and then some. Yeah.
I'm really curious of like the family dynamic, and very special question, like how proud were your parents? I imagine. Like that's amazing.
Oh, well, I mean, so two questions, right? First is the dynamic is interesting in that we're both in engineering. So I guess our senior vice president is the same or
Yep.
whatever, but maybe I'm more in the data science division of a certain product and he works on an engineering division of a different product, right? And so I think we share some commonalities where he can give me like his perspective on a certain tool based on his work experience.
That's
And I
cool.
can give him mine. And like, I think one of the ones that we coalesced around, one of the ones that we both use is this basically a ramping platform, if you will, internally. It's a way to basically gradually release a new feature to either internal or an external set of users, right? And so he was telling me about how he used that tool versus how I used it. And we realized, we use the same tool, but our perspectives on what it can do are just very different, right? So that was really interesting. I think in terms of parents, I would hope the mom and dad are proud of us. I think, first of all, both love our parents and probably follow our parents, like listen to our parents too much, a little bit. We care a little bit too much about their opinion but their parents, they love us. I think we're both very lucky to have been raised by them. They taught us to work hard, be good, right? You got to put in the work, but you also got to go get what you want, right?
Mm.
My mom always used to ask both of us, like, we would always say, "Oh, but it's their fault that they didn't do something." But she always say, at the end of the day, who suffers, right?
Mm.
So you want to go fix it, right? And I think both of us took that to heart. And both of us are pretty, I think, proactive in our careers and also in life. So very lucky to have them as parents. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'd be so cool to just have like your brother work in like a huge tech organization like right next to you. So I'm sure those Thanksgiving dinners or Christmas have some, hopefully not too much work talk, but
No, it's all
just some
good.
fun.
Yeah. No, my brother and I, so my parents were both refugees and they're from Vietnam, boat people, right? Escaped on a boat. And my brother and I were lucky to be born in the Bay Area, right? And so kind of growing up here, we had very close familial ties, right? I moved out of my house, 3-4 years ago when I got married, very traditional Asian thing where you live with your parents, so you get married, right? And my brother's not allowed to leave until he gets married. So he's stuck, right? But we all live within like 5 minutes of each other. It's really nice.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So it's lucky. Yep. Very lucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to continue talking about just like your life journey because you graduated in 2012.
Yeah.
You then, right out of school, you work as a business intelligence analyst at Semantic.
Yeah.
And then you set a goal of becoming a data scientist in February 2013.
Wow. Yeah.
Take us like what were the feelings? Like, why did you want to become a data scientist? And what
Yeah.
was calling you to do that?
So it's actually very personal. I think it took me a while to come up with this sort of, I would say, eloquent delivery because I had to spend a lot of time thinking about why was I
Yeah.
working so hard to be a data scientist, right? actually started when I was 19 or 20, right? So I was a declared math major and finance double major at Santa Clara University. It's my sophomore, junior year. I was a piss poor student. Like I didn't study. I think I got like a C in advanced calculus. Sorry, Professor Klizinski, but at some point, like I realized like my parent, and I'm going to try not to get emotional about this. I've told this a million times, but I get emotional about 70% of the time. So hopefully we'll see what happens. Right? But I realized that my parents risked their lives on an ocean to escape this country because they wanted to give their future generations a better chance at life. Right. And I was one of the lucky me and Kevin were one of the lucky ones to get that. Right. And I was looking at myself, man, I was like, man, what a piss poor way to pay that back. Right. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not a very good math student, but let me challenge myself. Right. Let me at least make myself into something. And math at the time, I think was a medium for me to do it. So I just I think I remember fall 2010, I just sat down, focused this out. I'm just gonna study. Right. Day in, day out, drop tennis, drop games, drop. I just focus and try to overcome this thing where I really thought that I couldn't do it like internally. Right. And so I went from like a straight maybe C, B minus student to a straight A minus student. I would never could quite get those A's because it was on a curve. So it
Yeah.
didn't really matter what your score was. It was your ranking with respect to the other students. And they would they would put your scores, your test scores in 5 columns on the board and they would draw lines. And if you were in the first column, you got an A, second column, you got a B. It didn't matter what your score was. It was just relative to your peers. Right. So I was always like in the bottom of the first, top of the second. Right? So I was an A minus guy. It's fine. I pushed myself to the limit and I was pretty proud of that. But I wanted to keep carrying that, right? I wanted to, because to me, it was like a way to say thank you, to pay back my parents and
For sure.
to honor that legacy and carry it forward, right? And say, look, they sacrificed so much for me, right? Let me make something of myself, right?
That's
You finish
amazing.
undergraduate, you go into the work in finance. I started actually as a financial analyst and then transferred into business intelligence through a rotation program. But I wanted to carry that. Like I missed that had given me so much purpose, right?
Mhm.
To use math as a medium to honor my parents' legacy. Now, in hindsight, does that seem really practical or like at the time it made sense, right? And it
Yeah.
gave me drive. And so I wanted to keep pushing. And I felt like data science, I think at the time, in my opinion, data science at a top tech company, which LinkedIn was and is, I think, still one of the top tech companies,
For sure.
um, was basically the epitome of that, right? And so I set that as a goal. I was like, okay, I want to work in data science. I want to get good at this role. And that was how it started. That was my drive. And I think at the core of that was really just honoring the legacy of my parents, right?
I think it's really cool that like you went from the C students as A minus with like a real passion to like
Hmm.
make your parents proud in a way
Yeah.
because they risk like so much.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like when you did say you wanted to be a data scientist, you set this goal. Take us through, like break down this goal. Like, what were some of the steps you identified to reach this goal, and what were the avenues you were going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to take to reach it.
Yeah. So I think this was around 20, I don't know, 13, right? And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of things. So at the time, we didn't have any boot camps. There was no
Yeah,
concept of like data science majors, right? No data science masters. Like data science was a very new field. Like Harvard had just dubbed it as like the sexiest job of the 21st century, something like that.
yeah.
To me, it was just the epitome of mathematics and industry. That's what it was, right?
Hmm.
I think at the time, at least what I observed was that teams of data scientists would be comprised of you're either really good at computer science or you're really good at stats, right?
Yep.
And I mean, I'm not the world's best programmer. I can code, but and back then, especially, what's code, right? What's Java?
Yeah.
Java's copy, right? I don't know what it is, right? So I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not that bad at math, so let me start a part-time master's in statistics, which is what I did in fall of 2013. Yes, Math
Interesting.
163, Introduction to Probability Statistics, right? And because my grades weren't the best, I didn't have a shot at maybe getting in some of the better schools. So I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to bootstrap this, go to San Jose State, right? Get the
Uh,
material, teach myself, well, not teach myself, but just start absorbing this mathematical knowledge so that I could advance my skills. Well, and I did this part-time while working full-time, right? So go out there, get the skills, right? And then simultaneously on the job, trying to figure out a way, because I was in this rotation program for new college grads.
yeah.
I figured out a way to get into the business intelligence division at Symantec. And when I rotated there for my third year, that's where I got my title changed from financial analyst to business intelligence analyst. And that's where I also started picking up like what I think is some core skills to part of the data science job, which is querying data with SQL, right? And then some form of visualization tool. So SQL, QuickView, how do you work with IT and engineers to set up a database, right? How do you query from it, visualize? How do you deliver insights to partners, right? That's the stuff I was learning at work. And then at school, I was slowly picking up my stats knowledge. This was 2013, 20. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's kind of how it started, right? The journey is still going today, 2023. But I'll pause there to see your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get this part-time master's in like statistics, you're doing online
Yeah.
courses and whatnot, just really
Yeah.
getting the skills.
Yeah.
I'm curious because then you moved to LinkedIn. So when did this program, when did this all finish up then?
So I started the master's in 2013. I also started a bunch of online courses. I think I did like 10 online Coursera courses or something like that.
Interesting.
So it's basically just teaching self-learning, right? Trying to get better. I actually didn't finish the master's until 2020. So it
Okay.
was, yeah, so 7-year part. Well, it's a 2-year program, but it's 13 classes. So, and it's a semester system. So I could really only do 2 per year. I tried doing 2 a semester. I just wasn't able to, do it, right? Just too much work, right? With a full-time job
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And so I did 1 class per semester for 13 semesters, which is 6.5 years. Yeah.
That is so cool. But I'm curious because that's an interesting timeline because in
Yeah.
in February 2015, you're at LinkedIn. You're a senior like data analyst at LinkedIn. Take us like how this like job like popped
Yeah.
up. Is this just like
So,
your
all right.
luck, or like how did this happen?
So if you read the fine print on the profile, I actually was hired at LinkedIn as a compensation analyst. I was not a data analyst at first. Okay.
Okay, so you're a compensation analyst.
I was hired as a compensation analyst in February of 2015 at LinkedIn to probably one of the best managers I've had. Rich, if you're listening to this, Rich is yeah, he's a great human being, great manager. I think he's a VP of some large HR function or multiple HR functions at Dropbox now. So
Mm.
shout out to Rich, one of the best managers I've ever had in my career. So he hired me as a compensation analyst in 2015. So at the time, so in terms of the skills, right? My SQL was pretty good. My
Yeah.
Tableau was decent. I mean, it was okay. Like it was okay. SQL was okay. Tableau was okay. I had about 3 to 4 classes of stats and machine learning under my belt. So I start to see what I could do with this stuff, right? I was hired as a compensation analyst at LinkedIn. They paid me a lot more than what Symantec did. And LinkedIn was actually one of the companies that I wanted to work for because at the time I was so career focused that I thought it was the coolest thing in the world to be able to put your career out there on a professional platform and connect with other professionals, right?
That's sweet.
I think LinkedIn was also rated like one of the best places to work in like 2013, like number 1 or something like that, 2013, 2014. So I'm like, wow, this company is reaching out to me. I take the interview. I do the interview in HR. There was maybe some Excel questions, which I had learned in my finance days, but mostly it was behavioral, right? But the role was marketed to me as an extremely analytical role in the HR function. I think in hindsight, I think it was true because LinkedIn was a very, very data-driven company, and it still is, right? So I joined LinkedIn in 2015 as a compensation analyst, and I think within a month I realized, shit, this may not be where I'd want to be ultimately if I wanted to be a data scientist, right?
Interesting.
And because I was now within the walls of LinkedIn, I started reaching out to other data scientists, and I definitely had like, oh, okay, this guy went to Stanford and he has a PhD, and what about this? Oh yeah, you did too, right? Like so, it's not, so there was definitely a lot of like imposter syndrome there, and so the lucky thing was that I think Rich, being the great manager that he was, and also realizing my passion, right? He told me, hey Jimmy, look, you're hired as a compensation analyst, but you can make this role whatever you want to make it, right?
Mm.
And of course, I had to do my day-to-day things, right? So like Excel dashboards, analysis, counteroffer modeling, all that stuff that the compensation analyst typically would do, right? But I think it was around that time where I started to be like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, if you really want to be a data scientist, Jimmy, no one's gonna stop you, right? No one's gonna. You have 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
Do your job, and then do whatever it takes to grow the skills, right? So I made friends with the HRIT team, got access to our internal databases, started querying things, calculating things like promotion velocity, and like just all these metrics that HR didn't have. Like I would predict like who would accept the job offer using the limited stats knowledge I would have, or because now the thing about it, you have internal HR data, right?
Yep.
No compensation. You have access to everything. You know how much everyone's paid, right?
Yep.
And you know how long it takes for them to get promoted. You also have access to their LinkedIn data, right? So you can say, oh, who do we hire from? How much do we pay them? If they leave our company, where do they go? Right? So you can answer all these questions by mixing internal and external data, just for obviously very confidential internal analysis that's shared at the aggregate level, not the individual level, to leadership to help them make decisions, right? And so you start doing all these crazy things that HR hasn't seen, right? Like predicting who would leave the company or using clustering to figure out job ranges. And Rich was totally on board with this. And so you start to build a name for yourself. You know, what the heck is this guy? Like he's a random analyst in HR, but he's doing all these crazy data science things. And I was only getting like stronger, right? I was only getting better at coding because I was doing all these online courses. I was doing machine learning classes, right? I was taking these skills, applying it to work. There's really a really strong reputation for myself in HR. So this was from like 2015. And 2015, 2016, there was this talent analytics team that partnered with HR to do analytics. I found a way to get like a rotation with them and just take on their work just
So
outside of. Go ahead. Yeah.
no, I would say so sweet.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so and again, I think Rich for letting me grow that side of me, and then letting me take the knowledge that I was gaining and then bring it back to his team, and then up level the team in that regard as well, right?
Yeah.
So that was how I think a lot of things had to come together. One is I had to have the drive to like not let the role define me, right? And there was a lot of pushback too, right? It's like, who the hell is this guy coming and doing all this stuff? Like, what fudge, right? And then there was also like lucky because I had a manager who was supportive of my growth, right?
Interesting.
And so this was 2015, 2016. This is right on the cusp of when I was about to get my first. Oh, also during that time, I was a lot of self doubt, a lot of like anger, bitterness, chip on the shoulder, right? Interviewing externally at companies, trying to transfer internally to data science. And there was like the first interview I tried was in like December of 2015. I was nowhere near the bar, right? It was for a contract role, right? It was hourly role. I would lose all my benefits, lose all of
Yep.
my perks at LinkedIn, but I was like, screw it. It's in data science. I'm going to do it, right? Failed the interview because I didn't clear the bar anyway, but it's fine, right?
Yeah.
And then like managing that relationship with your manager too, knowing that, he knows that you don't want to be here, but he's also trying to make it good for you and like being professional about it. And yeah, it was a challenging time, I think. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can tell you love like data and numbers because when you started talking about like putting all together like this internal data and this external
Yeah.
data, your voice like really sped up. You got
It's
really
fun.
excited. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's something you truly are passionate about. But like, did you?
Mhm.
I guess you always knew you're passionate about like math and statistics, of course, and it was just a seamless transition into like data science
I
opportunity.
think, I think, I think, I think in my 20, I'm 32. I think in my 20s, I was a lot more enamored with the techniques, the models, and the
Mm,
accuracy measures and precision and recall and all that stuff. Like I think it was a medium for me to build my skills. I think what excites me now, and I think maybe where that excitement you're hearing, right, is that using those skills, you're able to get insights and guide the business with the right data at the right time to make the right decision, right? That they otherwise wouldn't have had. That's the fun part to me, right? Be able to take all this and then say, hey, guys, this is what we should do, right? And then have a positive impact on the business because of your recommendation. That's the fun part. The tools and stuff, that's the means, right? And I think it's important to know the means very well because then if you really know the means, you can get to the right end, right? Because you know all the
yep.
nuances in the means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so October 2017 comes around and like you get your first data science role.
Right. Right.
How did you officially like make this transition into like, oh, my title is actually like a data scientist now?
Yeah. So, end of 2016, I'm going to back up a little bit. So end of 2016, I did a rotation with the talent analytics team. One of their
Yep.
members was going on maternity leave and I stepped in and took a role, right? And beginning of 2017, around March, February, March, it's about 2 years working with Rich in the compensation team.
Yep.
Rich sat me down. He's like, Jimmy, I know you're really passionate about data analytics, right? And I really want to make sure that you grow in that space, right? I
Yep.
really want to make sure that you grow, right? Best manager ever. He introduced me to a director in data science, named Shin Fu. Okay. This is March 2017. I remember very clearly. And I met Shin and I told him, look, Shin, I've been doing data science under a rock by myself for the last like 2.5, 3 years. No one's giving me feedback. People taking my work for their own, whatever. Right. And I asked him, dude, let me work for you for free on the nights and on my weekends. Right. My day, I'll just do my job. On nights and weekends, I'll work you for free. Right. You give me your shittiest projects. I don't care. Give me the stuff that no one on your team wants to do, and I will
Yep.
do it. Right. I asked him, what do you got to lose? You don't lose anything.
Nope.
I don't, I gain learning. You get a free head count. The only thing I lose is sleep. I don't give a crap. Right. Because I want to do this. Right. So he gives me a list of his team is like 20 people, list of all their projects. I literally go through this entire list and I break it into like 4 categories. And I'm like, all right, Shin, here's the crappy projects that no one wants to do. Right.
Yep.
And he was just like, what? What the fuck? Like, who the hell is this guy? Right. Sends an email to my manager. It's like, wow, good job, Rich. Way to look after such a motivated talent. So
That's
basically, I was
amazing.
able to finagle this like rotation thing. And let me tell you, man, that was some of the 6 months, the craziest. It was like, it is summer. It's hot.
Yep. Awesome.
HR building and the engineering building is a quarter of a mile away. And I'm biking back and forth between these buildings, going to data science meetings, going to HR meetings. Like I was teaching myself how to code in like Hadoop, which is like Pig and Hive and all these
Yeah, yeah.
big data querying languages, right? Teaching myself JSON, Avro schemas, like no, and I didn't have a team. I just was reading with I didn't even know how to copy stuff from like I could print stuff onto my like command terminal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know how to bring it into a spreadsheet. So what I would do is I would literally maximize the command window and copy the data on the screen and paste it. And then I would scroll down and copy it and paste it again, right? That was during the day I was doing my HR job. During the night I was doing like
Yeah.
so there was also things like in HR, you use a PC, but in data science, you use a Mac and everything is set up for a Mac. So I went to IT Lounge and I begged them for like their oldest like Mac laptop. They gave me some clunker they pulled out from the back. They're all banged up and shit. Set it up as my second machine. And that was the one. So I was carrying two laptops, right?
Yeah,
One for
yeah.
my HR job, one for my data science job. And yeah, so nights, weekends, Shin was lucky he paired me up with two of the data scientists. I took on some of their projects. And I failed miserably. Like we were writing in Pig. I didn't know how to optimize my Pig. So what I would do is I would write
Interesting.
it and I would wait until Friday night at 10 p.m. when the clusters were dead empty. And that's when I would run my query. Because you had 8 hours to execute that query. You don't
Yeah.
execute in 8 hours, they're going to kick you off, right? So I was like, okay, maximize the probability of success. Run it at 10 p.m. at night. And I would open my laptop and run it and put a folder on top of it. And Saturday morning, 6 a.m., I'd wake up and I'd pull it and see, did it finish? And so, like when I did that, it would maximize my chance of success. I didn't know how to optimize my queries. I'm not an engineer, right? I didn't, my mentor, she's out there. What's up, Ton, if you're listening to this? PhD in computer science, right? Like, this is her thing, right? And my other
Yeah.
mentor went to Harvard, right? So you're up with some of the best and brightest, right? That's the point. And so these people are not going to sit down and you get to teach yourself, right? And
Yeah.
so you get to meet with them once every week, maybe 15, 20 minutes to check up on how you're doing, right?
Yeah.
I still remember the first script that I wrote in Pig was so unoptimized. Like Ton was so upset. She took it and rewrote it herself. But that's fine. Like you just give them the middle finger. You just tough it out. And you just do it. Right. So I did that for like 6 months. Right. And
Yep.
after 6 months, I actually get pretty good at what I do. Right. You just tough it out and single-mindedly just focus on doing this thing. Right. And so 6 months, Shin sits me down and he's like, Jimmy, you want to interview again? And I'm like thinking, okay, this is the third time I'm trying to get to data science. Right? I don't care. I'm trying 10 times. I'm going to keep trying until I get it. Right.
It's
So,
amazing.
but this time around, oh man, this time I was ready. I was inside now. I had made friends.
Yep.
So I asked people, guys, mock interviews, PMs, mock interviews, data scientists, the people want to help you, right? So they ask you a question, they give you a sense. They won't tell you the answer, but they'll give you a sense of what to expect, right?
Yeah.
And so I go on to lead code. I do 100 SQL questions and then 100 R or Python questions. And I had my PM man. I would actually, there's a section of the interview, product sense, right, where they ask you a question of this metric is down week over week in search. How would you investigate, right?
Interesting.
Or how does LinkedIn member engagement on the platform lead to the success of the platform overall? Very vague, ambiguous questions where you have to put into a framework and solve. Classic case study thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I would do to practice this is that I would just go on the site and stare at it and be like, how would I make that better? And I just type to myself, oh, if I want to make the search bar better, well, I think I'd probably enlarge it a little bit. Oh, but if I enlarge it, it'll take up the space underneath in the feed and that'll decrease revenue, which will drop revenue, but it'll increase
Interesting.
search. And so you have to think about the product. That's the only way to
Wow.
prepare for these interviews, right? And so, and 2 days before the interview, this is getting to your October 17th. This is around September. Shin set me down. It's like, are you ready to do this? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. And I told him, Shin, I don't give a rat's ass. Okay. If you hired me as an associate data scientist,
Yeah.
right? I don't care. Right. I just want to be on your team. You give me a chance and you just hire me on your team. You give me a year and I will be the best data scientist that you have ever seen. I
That's
said
amazing.
straight to his face. I said it and I believed it. I believed it so much. Right.
Yeah.
I was on a mission. It was data science or death. That was that was the drive and think about the relationship with my manager too in HR.
Yeah.
He sat me down. He's like, Jimmy, Shin told me that you're interviewing. Okay. This is the third time you're doing this. And he told me, I remember Richie told me, I don't want someone on my team that doesn't want to be here. And that's a very fair thing for a manager to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I took that as, okay, there is no net this time. If I jump and I miss,
God.
right, that's it. I'm gone. Right. But I did not care. I wanted it. So I just said, all right, well, if there's only one way, then let's do it. Right. And so I ponied up, I studied my ass off and passed the interviews, flying colors, and transferred from HR to engineering. and in data science. Yeah.
That is so amazing. I want to give you like a round of applause. That's a
Yeah.
great story just in itself of like that whole transition.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like you had to feel like very confident going into these interviews. You just said 6 months of free work, or like were you
No,
confident you did it?
I didn't feel confident. I felt like I was going in
Really?
like I didn't I knew that they were gonna I came in with the mentality that I don't care. I knew they were gonna throw I came with the mentality that you're gonna give me something that I won't be able to solve, but that doesn't mean I'm just gonna stop. I'm just until that
Interesting.
clock hits the end of the interview, I am gonna keep trying to solve it. Right.
That's
And it
amazing.
turned out to be somewhere in between. Like I was fully expecting like the dragon to come out and bite my head off, right? But then the dragon came out, wasn't as strong as I thought it was. I did pretty decent, but I made sure just to, I never came in confident. I always was like, okay, what next? What next? What next? Right. Even though I was getting the answer right, I'm like, okay, what else? Right. Like it wasn't like you don't stop until the clock stops. Right. So
Yeah. Um, one I'm trying to one word to just like summarize like this whole story, I think is just like grit. I'm throwing out a
yeah,
bunch of words like grit, perseverance. I don't know if I don't hustle's not the right word, but it's like an incredible, like hardworking like story. Does this all send back to like your parents being refugees, like trying to make them proud, or like where does this like really come from?
pulling at the heartstrings. Huh? I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where it comes from. It comes from my parents. It comes from trying to carry that legacy, right? It comes from honoring that legacy. It comes from the drive to honor that legacy. That's where it comes from. Yeah.
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 And do you feel like an elevated sense of like urgency to like do like really well in your career? And if so, like is that a good thing? Like is that sense of
Yeah. That's a good
urgency a
question.
good thing?
I think back then, I felt it a lot stronger back then than I did now, right?
Yeah.
Because I was just so hung up on the ability. Part of it being in your 20s too, I think that you just really wanted to prove yourself.
Yeah.
For me, it was proving yourself on top of achieving this goal, on top of honoring your parents. So I remember I felt like it didn't matter what happened. I was going, I didn't care if I died. I would still be a data scientist. Like I would somehow in the afterlife, I was thinking like, even if they killed me, I'd still somehow with my spirit go after that job. Right. Like that was the type of attitude I
Yeah.
had. No, I think, is it a good thing? It's an effective thing. Right. But
Mm.
as you'll find out if we continue this journey between 2017 and 2019, there is a limit. There's a limit.
Yeah.
And if you cross the limit, if you go like using an Everest analogy, if you live in the dead zone too long, you're going to die. Right. Doesn't matter
Interesting.
how much willpower or how much strength you have. Right. There will be a point where you will burn out. Right. And I
Interesting.
think, so I think I learned from that journey that perseverance was a critical tool, but you also need to have time to like, you need to know your limit. And I think to really know your limit, you need to cross it a few times and you need to get burned a few times before, in my opinion, you know your limit, you cross it, you push yourself to the absolute human limit, your human limit. You burn out, you feel bitter, you cry, you break down, emotional breakdown, that stuff, right? But you don't give up. You
Mm.
persist, right?
Yep.
You recover through that. And you're like, okay, I'm a little bit more seasoned now. I'm not as maybe gung ho as I used to be. I'm not going to push past the red line too long. But I do know that I can still push up to that line, maybe over that line, but just be more self aware about whenever you're going over that limit and
Yeah.
know that it's not healthy to live in that zone too long and come back down, right? Even though internally you may feel like you want to keep going, right?
Interesting.
Have that counter voice to say, okay, push yourself, go beyond your limit. But at the same time, you know what? Respect yourself as well, right? You're a human being.
Mhm.
There's other things going on in your life besides just work, right? Which as you get older, you get family and like
Yep.
parents get older, you have to take care of them and more responsibility, all that stuff, right? That stuff's important too, right? So yeah, I'll pause there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what point, I mean, let's talk about it. Like in 2017, 2018, 2019, like what point did you experience that? And like, why did you experience that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think first 2 years in data science were tough because these people are not like, you don't, it's not the world's best. They're not called the world's best and brightest
Yeah.
for no freaking reason. They're actually pretty freaking good at what they do. Right. So I thought I came into data science. I was on cloud nine. I accomplished my goal.
You're
I
there.
was ready to kick ass. Right. And then I realized, yeah, I'm at the bottom of the whatever it is. Right. These people are good. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I have conquered everything with hard work and extremism. Let's do the same thing. And I think I pushed myself too much because there was just I just didn't give myself enough time to grow. And I was just pushing so hard as the master's program, right? Is granted, I didn't get my master's till 2020. So I was still like
Yeah.
2/3 of the way through my master's. So I would get into work at like 9, work till 5, sit in traffic, go to school at 6, drive back to work at 7:30, work till 2 a.m. Right? Like
Ish.
it was like that was, I was like, all right, this is what it's going to take to keep up and be the best. Right.
Wow.
And after a while, you burn out, you burn out. That's it. There's also a shift of like, sort of a EQ heavy environment to an IQ heavy environment. Right. I think HR was very
Mm,
friendly, very, I think bubbly, very kind, right?
yeah.
Balanced life. And you move into this world of like folks from all over the world that come. You're like the only American on the team of very international people, right?
Interesting.
Um, these folks are here most likely on a visa, right? They need to stay in this country to make money, right? They need this job to make money. So yeah, they're super bright and they're willing to work just as hard as you, right? And they have more experience too, right? So I had this like mentality that I had to keep up, and in trying to keep up, I ultimately burned out. That was the first 2 years, right? So in that burnout phase, right, what happens is I'm growing, I am learning,
Yeah.
right? I burn out, but there's a certain point, I think 2019, 2020, maybe going a little forward too early, but I recover. And then at that point, I had been 2 years in data science. So I had some of the skills.
You knew.
My drive was coming back. And so it's like, I think about like the sum of your, in earlier stage data science, it was 100% on effort, but 0% on skill. So 100 plus 0 is 100, right?
Yeah.
But then later on, it was like maybe 80% effort, but now 80% skill. So 80 plus 80 is 160. So the total effect was greater, right? But that you only get to 80/80 after time, because you need the experience to build up you need the time to build up your skills, right? So that was something that I missed from 2017 to 2019, that I just didn't give myself time to grow, right?
Interesting.
Now, if you ask me, would I do it again like that? Yeah, hell yeah, I'd do that again like that, because 100%, I would do it exactly the way I did it, because then if I didn't do it that way, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation right now. I wouldn't have the self-awareness to be able to share that with other people so they don't make that mistake, right? Until maybe one day when I want to be a manager one day, right? I understand that just because I'm successful today or just because I'm good today doesn't mean that I was always good. Right. And so
Yeah.
with that knowledge, I can help people grow into their roles. Right. Like I try to do mentoring. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious when did that shift? You said it was about 2 years. That shift really
Took me
went
about two
from
years.
like 100% effort to like 80% effort and 80% skill.
Gradual. Yeah. Yeah. It's very gradual. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there any way someone can accelerate their skill set in a data science role or how?
Yeah. I think nowadays it's more clear cut as to how you can do it. There's a very core set of skills that you
Yeah.
need as a data scientist. And I mean, obviously SQL's from a coding technical standpoint, you have to be able to query data. You have to be able to analyze it, right? So querying data, SQL is your starting point. Depending
Yeah.
on the company you work at, you may have to use like Scala or Pig or Hive or whatever the heck it is. But at the end of the day, it's the concept of retrieving data for analysis, right, is something that you need to pick up. And then once you have the data, how do you analyze it, tease out the intricacies, all that stuff, right? And then once you have the insights, right, how do you present it in a way that's not just like, hey, look what I found, but hey,
Yeah.
this is something that you should do based on what I see in the data, right? There's just a difference between delivering just insights and then actionable insights, right?
Mm.
But that life cycle that I described for you is just like one type of data scientist, more like statistician, if you will, which is more
Yeah.
me. There's a whole nother route that is associated with data science, which is more on the machine learning production side, right? So if you take
Yeah.
it from data to Python, the fork in the road is like Python, okay, insights, or Python into production model, right?
Mm.
I never went the production model route, so I can't comment as much, but I have friends who went that way as well, right?
Yeah.
It's, the idea is the same. You take the data, put it into this Python thing, and then maybe for them, they optimize it a little bit more before pushing it to some sort of function that serves like a website, right?
So
And that's more like your machine learning engineering, right? But the core, right? If you
yeah.
notice, the path is the same: retrieve, analyze, get insights, or analyze, generate model, right? But the
Interesting.
retrieve and the analyze piece are very core to that journey, right?
I love
Yeah,
that. And I want to talk about your journey. We are winding down on time here a little bit
sure.
more, but the past 2 years, you go through this burnout,
Yeah,
like it wasn't the best, but you recover and your drive is
hmm,
back. All of that's back. What has
yeah.
changed for you the most in your professional life the past like 2 years when it comes to LinkedIn or just how you balance work life balance to just something like you're proud of?
Yeah, I think I'm much more, I mean, as they say, much more experienced, much more jaded, much more whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
You're first of all, objectively, you're better at what you do, right? And that's good. It's good to be improving every year. Try to pick up new
Mhm.
skills. I think I'm a lot more humble, as well, not humble, but just a lot more like just know that yeah, you're there, but there's always more to be learning, right? So and it's
Yeah.
okay not to know everything. Like I'm super vulnerable on not knowing something, right? So I'm like, hey, I don't know, but I can always learn. I can try, right? That the idea of perseverance is still core to my being, right?
That's amazing.
I think the drive I had to prove myself, it's not to prove myself. The drive is not to prove myself anymore. I think the drive now is just to be the best analytics professional you can be, right? I don't know why that faded. Maybe it's just a function of getting older or
Yeah.
different priorities in life. And I'm married to my college sweetheart,
Yep.
11, 12 years, and we want to have kids, right? We want to travel. There's other things to life other than just work. She's a teacher, right? And so she worked very hard. And so, yeah, I think those things just together, and parents are getting older. You just want to spend more time with them, right? All those things, right? And you'd also been working for some time. It's just a mix of, it's just, I think it is honestly just the natural progression of life. It's just how it is, right? Things move, right? So,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I think because a lot of people that are like fresh out of school, like I am, I'm 2 years graduate or whatnot. Like
congrats.
I feel like a sense of urgency to like prove myself
Yeah,
as well.
that's
Like,
okay.
and like in 5 years, I like try to reflect on like in 5 years, like what am I gonna think? And it's gonna be like right now, I'm working very hard,
Awesome.
but I am curious, like what in 5 years, like what it'll be like. So that's where that question.
I see. Well, I mean, right, look, like if I had to tell you, like, is it wrong to feel that sense of urgency and that drive at your stage in life? No, absolutely not. If
Yeah.
anything, harness it, man. Ride it, right? Go for it. Because no, it's and actually everyone is different. So maybe you can keep it longer
Yeah.
than I did. I kept it for about maybe 8, 9 years, right?
Long
Um,
time.
yeah, but everyone is different, and some people don't pick up that drive until later. I have a friend who didn't pick it up until like mid 30s, and now he's doing really great, right? Um, so it's I guess the only that's cheesy. The only constant is change, but it's true, right? But like it's not wrong, right? I don't think there's ever a right or wrong. It's just like if it's there, I think just be aware of it, and then there's a positive to every phase, right?
Mhm.
Maybe now I don't know. Maybe I won't get promoted as fast, or I won't learn as fast, right? But I'm still learning, but at the same time, I'm also growing out the other aspects of my life, right? That's
Yep.
okay too. For you, if you have that sense of urgency, take it, harness it, drive it. Yeah, that's awesome.
I
Yeah,
like that. And last question. So actually, I usually ask the question to you, but I want to have you just ask like our audience a question, like something that they should just like consider and ask themselves and like really like, or Jimmy asked me this question, like, what do I think?
yeah. I think the biggest thing I would ask you is, I think you mentioned that this podcast was targeted maybe more towards young work professionals, right? Just remember why you do what you do, and I guess know that it's okay not to know what you want, right?
Yeah.
But the most important thing is to always view yourself at a point A and always set a point B. Like, I think this is what I want, right? And just go for it, right? Like, a lot of times folks may get stuck. Like, okay, is that the right point B? What if I put all this time in and like I get there and it's not what I want, right? Then I'll tell you, man. Like, there's a lot of things in data science that I don't like either, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be the golden whatever, right? But the point is like to always be moving, right? Once you get to that point B, whatever it is, you see what you like, you see what you don't like, right? By the way, as you're making that journey, you're also changing as a person, right?
Yeah.
So when you get there, there's gonna be stuff you like and there's gonna be stuff that you don't like. Make that your new point A, set a new point B, and go after it, right? I think life is better when you have goals, right? When you
Mm.
set something, when you move towards something, right? And you are right in saying, "Hey, I don't know if that's not that what I want." Who does know, man? Honestly, I don't know, right? You didn't tell me because I don't know, right? But but it just makes life, I don't know, more meaningful, better,
Sure.
purposeful if you just have something to work towards and just always improve yourself, right? I think that's what I would leave the audience with. Like, it's okay. Like, if anyone, in my opinion, anyone tells you, "Oh, this is what exactly what I want," maybe they're right.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, or I'm 99% sure that that's probably not what they'll want in 20 years, right? If you find someone who's that single-minded, focused 20, you know, what? I'd more than happy to prove wrong, right? But that's my philosophy, right? Yeah,
I love that. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a fun episode. I'm so happy we could get you on. So thank you so much for being here. It was great.
glad I could be here, Ryan. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Yeah.